the world that they were in. The movie's budget actually skyrocketed by about $4 million because of a fire that started at I think Elm Tree Studios, where they were shooting this, because of a different movie that came out in 1980, and that was The Shining.
Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick's.
So those were filmed simultaneously next to each other.
Yeah. And The Shining came out. That came out 2 days later, May 23rd, 1980. May was a big month in 1980.
I love that movie so much.
Yeah. Apparently, a lot of people didn't when it came out. It was not a hit.
Stephen King doesn't like it.
Stephen King
is notoriously wrong on that movie. Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, it really. I think it also had a lot to do with the fact that the book came out just like 3 years prior. Like that was still very fresh in the minds of people. People also read books a lot back then, you know.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of like if one of the Hunger Games took this bizarre twist. Like it's something that came out very recently, very fresh in everyone's mind.
Also, too, it was Jack Nicholson at the height of being Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Like he had come off his Oscar wins, and he was already this kind of iconic guy. But let's face it, that moment with the head through the door, here's Johnny. I mean,
funny trivia about that is he had been a fire marshal. Jack Nicholson had worked with an actual fire axe, and originally they gave him a fake door to chop through, but he chopped through it too fast, so they had to give him a real door, so he had to start messing up real doors.
Because he knew how to do it.
Yeah.
But one thing I would say about Shining and Kubrick and the reception was people didn't want that kind of movie from Kubrick. And we talked about Psycho earlier. It was the same with Hitchcock, right? He took the Robert Bloch novel, which was total schlock slasher crap, right?
Yeah.
It was not a great book. Movie's much better. Then you get to The Shining, and King was not perceived as haute fiction or anything. And so Kubrick making this movie, I think a lot of people just didn't want that. They wanted him to be, his amazing, crazy kind of.
Yeah, like it was not befitting an auteur or something.
No, that's
to do
exactly it.
This, pop culture probably would have been viewed as sort of a trash novel at that time. Now we of course see him as art, but
But The Shining, I read the book as a kid, really liked it, but it is much more simple than the movie. I mean, you literally have like the evil boiler and like the house has eyes and like the whole like the way it unfolds in the end is just completely inferior to the Kubrick version.
But it's also too like the story of the making of the movie itself is legendary. And of course, there's the documentary Room 237.
Oh yeah, I was just about to get to that.
And that's I mean, there was a Stanley Kubrick exhibit at LACMA in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I went. It was
LA
fantastic.
and
Hedge maze. They have the little model.
And they had like they had the axe, I think.
Yep.
They had the dresses of the twins.
They did not have an elevator full of blood.
No.
One of my favorite effects ever.
It's so,
The elevator?
Yeah.
The maze
that's
too.
Unbelievable.
So go back and watch the movie and watch the hedge maze shot. First of all, the real hedge maze didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
It's a model. It is seamless. You can see them walk around and it's so seamless, zooms in and zooms out. It's so well done. And like, this is the guy who brought us 2001, of course, which still holds up with special effects. And this movie was no different.
Of course, the frozen Jack Nicholson also launched 1,000 memes.
There's actually there's apparently there were 2 minutes that were cut from the end of the theatrical version. Like Warner Brothers ordered these last 2 minutes chopped off, where it's basically Wendy waking up in a hospital bed and then being like, "Never found your husband's body."
Yeah?
Which it's kind of pulls the rug out one more time. It's sort of an M. Night Shyamalan. Like, did anything happen? Did anything happen in this movie?
But they didn't need that. I mean, the zoom in on the photo at the end.
No, exactly.
Is
It's
perfect
haunting.
ending.
Haunting.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's so much trivia about this movie, and there's so much to discuss about it, so much to unpack. Apparently, the "Here's Johnny" line, the famous "Here's Johnny" going through the door, referring to Ed McMahon on Johnny Carson's show, Ed McMahon introduced Johnny Carson. We know where the reference is from. Anyway, Kubrick didn't catch that. He didn't get that because he grew up in the UK and he didn't watch Ed McMahon, so he almost cut that out. And that's one of the most famous lines in the whole movie.
Made no sense for me. Again, I watched it in Germany in German.
Yeah.
It's like, here's Johnny. His name
Got
is
his
not
character's
Johnny.
name wrong. It's horrible. It's Jack.
It's a terrible movie.
Actually, the outtakes from the opening scene were later used by Ridley Scott for the closing scenes of Blade Runner. Different movie. That's a weird thing to use.
Wait, the outtakes?
They just the very opening scenes. There were some that were
they're driving
cut
up the
out.
mountain?
Yeah, just mountain shots. Yeah. So if it looks familiar, that's where it's from.
I love
that's right.
That
The
montage
scene.
at the beginning of driving up the crazy mountain passage is so
It's
wonderful.
so
And
awesome.
also, of course, like the Overlook and the Stanley Hotel and everything too.
Yeah.
Just like again, like we've talked about this in one of the previous chapters in History of Awesome. But it was these kind of horror movie landmark places now, and
Yeah.
you know, people still.
If you type home into Google Maps, it'll pull up the Stanley Hotel.
Are you serious?
Yep, which is
That is
really,
so
really
cool.
terrifying if you're
crazy.
lost and late at night. And you're just like, I don't know, does this work? And
You know what's funny? I mean, the novel Dr. Sleep came out, of course, and it's Stephen King's sequel to The Shining. And it's funny now, if they were, when they're going to make a movie, I'm sure they're going to
Yeah.
make a movie, you cannot make it as a sequel to The Shining because Halloran, the, Scatman, what's his
Yeah,
name?
Scatman Crothers.
Yeah, he dies in the Kubrick version,
Yeah.
but not in the book. And so he appears in the sequel, of course. So it's interesting.
I love
see
the,
what
They
happens.
can retcon that.
I love
Probably.
the...
Oh, it didn't hurt.
Yeah. No, this is a sequel to the Shining, the ABC miniseries that happened.
Right.
It's a different one.
I didn't like that one.
The Steven Weber.
But it
one.
was closer to the book, and King liked that one better.
Have you guys heard the theory that The Shining was Kubrick's coded confession to
Yes.
having helped fake the moon landing?
There's so much. There are all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
There's a documentary about that whole thing. All the hidden
I will
things.
look that up.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
room
yeah.
237.